Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today we are going to get into the top 15 books that define my reading taste. Obviously, these are all going to be 5-star favorite books of all time. I don't know why I would include books that I don't like to define my taste, but I absolutely love all of these and I can't wait to share them with you. This is inspired by the Bookstagram trend that I saw going around where people were making this graphic with like the books that best defined their reading taste. I thought it was so cool, so I wanted to make a video of that kind of a concept. I don't do a lot of Bookstagram stuff. I don't like making the graphics and all of that. I wish I had a passion for that. I simply don't. I would much rather yap. So I'm here to yap about the books that define my reading taste. And please let me know down below as you're watching how close your taste is to mine. We are now going to get into the 15 books that define my reading experience, my taste as a reader. So we have to start out with the iconic Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This is my favorite thriller of all time. This is the book for me. I literally have a tattoo of the locket on the cover. Like, I'm obsessed with Pretty Girls. I named my book club after this book. If you want to join my Pretty Girl book club, the link is always down below. And we read a lot of thrillers over there, all inspired from my original experience reading this book and just needing to talk about it with people on the internet, because this is the best thriller I've ever read in my life. It will continue to be. I've reread it. It holds up. Even when you know what the twists are, the emotional weight of it and the connection to the characters is flawless, is perfect. I think you should go in blind to this book, but do prepare for intense darkness, crazy twists, and big emotions. I cannot sit here and categorize my feelings for this book without talking for 25 minutes, but I love it. And if you've been here for any length of time, you should know that I love it. Next up, we have another thriller who's surprised, and that is Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothschild. And this is about a woman who is a therapist, but she is accused of murdering her husband. However, she did not murder her husband, but she did murder 3 other people. So she's trying to get through this police interview and get off scot-free without the police finding out about the 3 people she did murder. This defines my taste not only because it's a 5-star read and my favorite book of 2 years ago, but also because it has that beachy, summery setting I love. It's extremely character driven and we are following an unlikable and morally gray woman who kills, and we're also following a therapist POV, and there's a ton of mental health rep in here. There's nothing closer to being a Hailey coded book than Blood Sugar. Next up, we have an oldie but a goodie. I read this book a while ago, but it still lives in my mind and definitely defines my taste, and that is Invisible Monsters by Chuck Palahniuk. I actually have the Invisible Monsters remix version here. This is my favorite edition of this book because it is all out of order, but basically we're following a beautiful model who gets into a horrifying, disfiguring accident, and she has to bounce back, not only physically as her career is on hold, but mentally as well. And she is in and out of the mental hospital dealing with a lot of issues that are coming up for her and connecting with people who are different from her. Panic at the Disco's first album is actually based on this book. Ryan Ross, if you know the Panic lore, which I don't like Panic at the Disco anymore and I fucking hate Brendan Urie, so don't come for me, but Ryan Ross is a gem and wrote all the songs for that first debut album based on his experience reading this book. If you like that album, you will like the themes in this book. It will resonate deeply with you, and it definitely did with me. This is a classic. This is one that I could flip to any random chapter and read it, and that's why the out of order nature of this edition just like it really resonates. Next up, it would not be Haley's reading taste if it didn't involve a classic slasher. I grew up on slashers. I love slashers. That is when I feel the most comforted, honestly, is when I'm watching a slasher movie. Don't worry, my therapist knows and we're working on it. So I have to include my favorite slasher of all time, and that is Brother. This is not your ordinary, just like picking people off one by one with no meaning or explanation. We are following a boy who grew up in this family of sadistic, cannibalistic killers, and he starts to suspect that he does not really align with the path that's lined out for him to grow up to become a sadistic cannibal just like his family. So he starts rebelling against the family dynamic. Again, this is super dark, super graphic, super character driven, but it kind of takes that idea of like the classic Texas Chainsaw Massacre or like Wrong Turn story and turns it on its head and goes into the generational themes, the trauma of it. But at its heart, like, it's also just an amazing horror slasher book. I am obsessed with Brother. I will take this book to my grave. Next up, let's talk about The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one is just a classic. I almost didn't put it in this video because I feel like so many people love it, but I don't care. I was one of the originals, I feel. I read this book really early on when it came out and I just sobbed. I read it all in one day. I remember sitting down to read it thinking, oh, I'll just get a couple chapters into this. And then I read the entire thing. I sobbed. It is, again, character driven about a morally gray woman, Evelyn Hugo, who is famous and chronicling her life basically as like a verbal memoir to a woman who is writing it all down through the lens of her 7 marriages. I love looking at a woman through the eyes of her relationships. I think it says a lot about, you know, mental health, attachment dynamics, things like that, and the generational trauma that Evelyn was certainly grappling with, along with the themes of homophobia and suppressing your identity in here. That really, really deeply resonates, and I'm obsessed with this book. I'm obsessed with Evelyn. I cannot wait for the adaptation. I hope they don't fuck it up. And jumping back into horror, we have One Bloody Thing After Another by Joey Como. This is a short, funny, dark, and fast-paced horror novella that follows a bunch of quirky characters in this little town. We know that I love a little suburban moment where like everyone is quirky. Like we have these like quirky little archetypes in the neighborhood. The main perspective that we're following is this little adolescent girl who is having feelings for her female best friend for the first time, trying to figure that out and basically combusting into flames because of her rage. Yeah, this is my adolescent experience. Sorry about the angle change. My camera battery died and it literally gives you 10 seconds to change it. So I was frantically changing it just now, but let me keep telling you about this book because I feel like no one reads it when I recommend it. This book defines my taste for a reason. It's the queer rep. It's the dark funniness of it. Like, it is so dark, but it is hilarious. I was laughing out loud reading this book. It's so relatable. It is the female rage begins in adolescent experience. It's perfect to me. Next up, we have One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. I absolutely love this book. This book feels like a vacation. We are following a girl who loses her mother and then goes on this trip of a lifetime to the Amalfi Coast in Italy. And while there, she meets a younger version of her mother when she took the same trip like 40 years earlier or something like that. And she gets to know her mother in a different way. This book is so, again, character driven, emotional. We have the magical realism elements that I love. The scenery is beautiful. It's just gorgeous descriptions the entire way through. And we have the generational trauma rep. Like, it is perfect. It is amazing. I sobbed reading this one as well. Next up, let's talk about The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torre. This one is so fun. So much fun. Y'all know I love the intersection of smut and horror. It's why I have merch that says I only read smut and horror, which is that totally true? Not really. I do read other things, but this is my favorite. The intersection of a online sex worker who locks herself in her room and pursues this career as a cam girl just so she can prevent leaving her apartment and killing people because she literally won't be able to resist. Female serial killer turned sex worker who falls in love with the UPS man delivering her packages to her compound apartment. Like, Again, the female rage, the morally gray female character, the twists and turns and the fast pace of this book is amazing, combined with the smutty romantic elements. It's a Hailey book. Like, that is a Hailey book. Next up, something a little bit different that I don't talk about too often is The Humans by Matt Haig. I think about this book all the time. It's about an alien who has to come to Earth and inhabit a human body and like blend in so he doesn't get caught. But along the way, he's like learning about what it is to be human. It is so darkly funny, and it's just kind of about the intricacies of human development over the years, what like other species like an alien might think are weird, but what's so essential to our being. There are really, really beautiful pieces of commentary in here that I love, but it's set against this like sarcastic, dry, funny tone that makes dealing with the realness just a little bit easier. This book is emotional and it's raw, but it's also, I don't know, pretentious, but in a fun way, because you're looking at the world through the lens of an alien. So of course the alien's gonna be like, my planet is so much better than these mere humans, but you're a human reader reading it, so do you know what I mean? It's that, and I love that. We have to talk about The Elephant in the Room, the book that when anyone asks me my favorite book, obviously I say Pretty Girls, but this book does flash in my mind for a second. It was the best book and most defining book of my high school experience. My best friend wrote a musical based on this book. I will not be opening this book for you because you would see all my cringe annotations about my high school relationship that traumatized me. This is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, and this is about a girl who underwent some traumatic experiences. Her family's annual trip to Martha's Vineyard, so it's like this beachy, summery, idyllic setting, really lyrical, flowery, beautiful writing, and it just tells this heartbreaking story of what it's like to find your identity and unfortunately find it through a relationship in your adolescence. It is sad. It will piss you off, but it's beautiful, and it has a twist that will literally rip your heart out. I am absolutely obsessed with this book. It can do no wrong. Please do not put slander for this book in the comments. I will cry. I'm just a girl. It's the law. You have to be nice to me. Next up, let's talk about a recent favorite, and that is Bad Dolls by Rachel Harrison. I'm pretty sure that if you watched my Rachel Harrison taste test vlog, you could see me having a spiritual experience as I was reading Bad Dolls. I literally sobbed through the entire thing. It's just 4 short stories about the slightly horrifying and magical realism-esque kind of creepy elements of being a woman, just like the experiences of being a woman in your mid-20s and figuring yourself out and connecting things from childhood, but through the lens of these, like I said, like speculative horror stories. It is so good. Every single story resonated so deeply with me. Rachel Harrison writes with such raw emotion and relatability in a way that's just accessible. It feels like it's not going over my head, it's going straight to my heart. And the horror is also really good. She's really funny. I think Rachel Harrison can do no wrong. I love all of her books, but this one defines my taste. We have another favorite from just this past year, and of course, you could probably guess this one was gonna be on this list, How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I know a lot of people have a lot of things to say about the way that Grady Hendrix writes women. All I have to say is, maybe I'm not a real woman, like maybe I'm not valid and I can't be here, because when Grady Hendrix is writing about a woman, he's writing about me. The main character of this book is me. We are following her and her brother as they reconnect over cleaning out their parents' house when their parents tragically and suddenly pass away. So they're literally going through this haunted house that is haunted by their childhood trauma and all the things that happened in the family as they grew up. But of course, because it's a Grady Hendrix book, it's kooky, it's funny, it's horror, but in a way that is totally over the top and ridiculous. The same weirdness that I love from Invisible Monsters shows up in How to Sell a Haunted House, but not in like a pretentious Bunny by Mona Awad kind of way, in a more accessible and introspective, reflective kind of way. I love the metaphor of the haunted house and the ghosts and the puppets and dolls representing the haunts of the secrets and lies in the family. I love the exploration of the family dynamics and the sibling relationship. This defines the plight of the oldest daughter. If you are an oldest daughter, aka your family's therapist, you will love this book. Next up, of course, we had to include a domestic thriller on this list. My favorite is The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. This will forever be the original bitch I'm gonna snatch your life thriller. And it is the most delicious, scandalous, twisty domestic thriller I could ever recommend to you. If you need a summer read, this is it. A lot of these books have like deeper meaning for me, but a massive part of my book taste is not reading anything with a deeper meaning, just reading something fun and summery and twisty and scandalously delicious, and that is The Last Mrs. Parrish, but it also does have some emotional weight to it as well, and it is pretty dark. As we know, those are two things that are pretty much essential for me to give a book 5 stars. In this book, we're following Amber, this young little scrappy nobody who is coming up as a nanny, trying to bust her way into a rich family's ideal life so she can snatch the wife's life for her own. So then we meet Daphne, the rich, beautiful, high society wife that Amber is going after, and she's gonna steal her husband, her house, her kids, her career, her everything, until Daphne is left in shambles and Amber is on top. It's a rags to riches story, but it doesn't go exactly as you might expect. I just read the sequel to this book, and when I tell y'all, it's phenomenal. Just wait for the vlog. And if that vlog is already out, I will link it up above and down below because I was floored. Next up, let's talk about another underrated book that I almost never hear anyone talk about, but that seriously defines my reading taste, and that is Golden Boy by Abigail Tartlin. And this book follows an intersex child who is discovering who they are and how they want to define themselves in a world that is just completely blank. They literally encapsulate the gray area. They have to navigate all of society's projections and stereotypes and find out who they truly are in the midst of this family dynamic, which is deeply traumatizing, adolescent relationships, and the plight of adolescent friendships, which can be extremely hard to navigate regardless, but especially if you're having identity problems. The rep in here is amazing. If you are intersex or non-binary, I highly, highly recommend this book. It could be triggering and it is really emotional, but it just defines an experience that I feel like is never talked about enough. I sobbed through the latter half of this book. It is twisty, but not in a way that's like, oh my god, that's crazy, in a way that's like, oh, my heart is going to shatter into a million pieces. It has this character-driven emotional weight that I love. It is dark, and it does have amazing LGBTQIA rep, so you know, it defines my taste. And the last book that I want to share with you guys to define my reading taste is Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemor, and this book is everything. Something that I haven't really talked about in this video, but that is an 80s setting. I feel like that is a piece that really defines my taste. I love a book set in the 80s and 90s. It has my magical realism elements that I love. We are following a kind of morally gray woman who's a little bit unlikable at times, who's just trying to figure herself out and work through her adolescence. And we are looking at her life through the lens of her relationships. It's extremely, extremely character driven, like I said, so if you don't like that, you're probably not gonna like this. But if you like a woman time traveling to random years in her life every single New Year's Eve and peeping in to see what's gonna happen and picking up her life from there, living her life completely out of order and just trying to figure out how she got where she got, you will love this book. I know it sounds like a really convoluted synopsis, but I promise this one is phenomenal. Again, the twists in here are not like, oh my god, I mean, they kind of are. Like, there are shocking twists in here. It does read like a thriller in that way. However, the twists are like more heartbreaking and emotional, since this is a, I wouldn't say historical because half of it takes place in the past because this girl's like 18 in 1989 or something like that. And then it also takes place in the future because we follow her over the course of her entire life. I don't know. It's really weird. It's like set in this time travel-y magical realism space that feels really surreal. I guess this is just magical realism, but it has elements of a thriller, elements of a romance, elements of a family drama. This book is just everything. That's why I wanted to end on it, because she really is everything. And again, I feel like I don't talk about it enough. So with that, those are the 15 books that completely define and encapsulate my reading taste. They're all favorites of all time, 5-star books. If you haven't read any of them, please do. And if you like them, please DM me. I love to talk about these books with you guys. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!